Have you ever wondered what led to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah? These cities, known for their wickedness, were not only devastated by divine judgment, but their story holds deep lessons that remain relevant today. In Genesis 19, the Bible narrates this apocalyptic tale where God's judgment not only shows his severity, but also his mercy toward the righteous. Could this story from thousands of years ago have a message for our lives today? In this video, we will dive into one of the most fascinating episodes of the Old Testament, exploring the events that led to the fall of Sodom and Gomorrah, the crucial role Lot and his family played, and the key teachings we can apply in our daily lives. Why did God decide to destroy them? What can we learn from this judgment and his mercy? We'd love to hear your opinion. What lessons do you think we should take from the fall of Sodom and Gomorrah? Write your thoughts in the comments. Lessons of justice and mercy. Join the conversation. Stay with us until the end to unravel the mysteries and lessons this story offers. Historical and biblical context. To fully understand the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, it is crucial to place them in their historical and biblical context. These cities, mentioned in the book of Genesis, were located in the Jordan Plain, a fertile and prosperous region that attracted many inhabitants due to its wealth and opportunities. However, this material prosperity was not reflected in their morality. Sodom and Gomorrah were known for their decadence and corruption. The Bible describes their inhabitants as deeply immoral people who lived in a culture of excess and rampant sins. The wealth and opulence of the cities had led their citizens to a life of indulgence and hedonism, where the pursuit of pleasure and power took precedence over everything else. The society of Sodom and Gomorrah was characterized by its lack of justice and compassion. Violence, injustice, and oppression of the weak were common. Visitors and foreigners were treated with extreme hostility, as illustrated in the account of Genesis 19, where the men of Sodom demand that Lot hand over his guests, the angels, so they could abuse them. This act of violence and dehumanization shows the level of depravity to which the inhabitants of these cities had sunk. The moral decay of Sodom and Gomorrah was so deep that the Bible describes their sin as a cry that had reached God. This cry does not refer only to individual acts of sin, but to an entire culture and society immersed in evil. The prophet Ezekiel also mentions that arrogance, gluttony, and lack of concern for the poor and needy were characteristics of these cities. In summary, Sodom and Gomorrah represent the extreme of moral corruption and decadence. Their story serves as a warning about the dangers of living a life disconnected from the divine principles of justice, compassion, and humility. The destruction of these cities was not only an act of divine judgment, but also a sign of God's intolerance towards rampant evil and the importance of living a just and pious life. The visit of the angels. The story of the angels' visit to Sodom begins with the introduction of two key characters, Lot and the two angels sent by God. Lot, Abraham's nephew, lived in Sodom with his family. Despite being surrounded by a corrupt society, Lot stood out for his righteousness and hospitality, qualities that would be tested with the arrival of the angels. The angels arrived in Sodom at dusk, and Lot, seeing them, rose to greet them and bowed his face to the ground, a sign of respect and reverence. He insisted that they stay at his house for the night instead of staying in the city square. Lot knew well the danger that staying outdoors posed for visitors in such a depraved city. Lot's hospitality was not well received by the inhabitants of Sodom. That very night, before they went to bed, all the men of the city, from the youngest to the oldest, surrounded Lot's house and demanded that he hand over his guests so they could abuse them, demonstrating the extreme wickedness of the city. Lot went out to speak with them, calling them brothers and imploring them not to commit such wickedness. He even offered his own daughters to protect his guests, an act that highlights both the gravity of the situation and the sense of responsibility and protection he felt towards the angels. This event not only underscores the deep corruption of Sodom, but also Lot's righteousness and courage. The visit of the angels marked the beginning of the end for Sodom and Gomorrah, but it also showed the importance of hospitality and the protection of the innocent. The wickedness of the inhabitants. The wickedness of the inhabitants of Sodom is revealed emphatically in their demand that fateful night. The men of the city, young and old, surrounded Lot's house and demanded that he hand over his visitors so they could abuse them. This request not only demonstrates the deep depravity of Sodom, but also their total lack of respect for human dignity and the sanctity of hospitality. Faced with this situation, Lot showed his bravery and sense of justice by confronting the crowd. He begged them not to commit such vile acts, and in a desperate attempt to protect his guests, he offered his own daughters in their place. Although this offer may seem shocking from a modern perspective, it reflects the seriousness of the situation and the value Lot placed on protecting those under his roof. The situation reached a breaking point when the men of Sodom became even more enraged and threatened to harm Lot more than the visitors themselves. At that moment, divine intervention became evident. The angels, recognizing the imminent danger, extended their hands, pulled Lot back into the house, and closed the door behind him. Then they struck the men outside with blindness, incapacitating them so they could not find the entrance. This divine intervention not only saved Lot and his family, but also underscored the severity of Sodom's sin and the impending justice of God. The attackers' blindness symbolizes their moral and spiritual blindness and marks the beginning of the end for Sodom and Gomorrah, cities that had sunk into evil intolerable in God's eyes. The warning of destruction. The warning of destruction came to Lot in the midst of the chaos that had enveloped his house. After blinding the men attempting to assault his home, the angels revealed their true purpose: the imminent destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah due to the extreme wickedness of their inhabitants. The angels told Lot that he must gather his family and leave the city immediately, as divine judgment was about to be unleashed. The urgency to leave was clear and pressing. Lot, understanding the gravity of the message, quickly went to warn his future sons-in-law, the fiancés of his daughters. He explained that God was going to destroy the city and that they needed to flee immediately. However, his warnings were not taken seriously. The future sons-in-law mocked him, thinking he was joking or exaggerating. Their disbelief reflects a deep disconnect from the spiritual and moral reality in which they lived, an attitude that contributed to their downfall. Faced with the refusal of his sons-in-law, Lot returned to his house, where the angels reiterated the need to leave without delay. At dawn, the angels hurried Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters. Taking them by the hand and leading them out of the city, they gave clear instructions. Flee for your lives. Don't look back, and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away. This warning of destruction and Lot's subsequent hurried departure highlights God's mercy in offering an escape to the righteous, but also the inexorability of his justice in the face of corruption and rampant wickedness. The disbelief of Lot's sons-in-law serves as a reminder of the importance of listening to and acting on divine warnings. Lot and his family's escape from Sodom is one of the most dramatic and significant scenes in the biblical account. At dawn, the angels urged Lot to leave the city with his wife and daughters, emphasizing the need to abandon the place before divine judgment fell. In an act of mercy, the angels took each family member by the hand and guided them out of Sodom, emphasizing both the urgency and divine protection. The angels' instruction was clear and direct. Flee for your lives. Don't look back, and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away. This command not only had a practical purpose of saving their lives, but also carried a profound spiritual significance. Looking back symbolized a lack of faith and an attachment to Sodom's corrupt past, while moving forward without hesitation represented trust in salvation and divine providence. However, in the midst of the escape, Lot's wife disobeyed this critical instruction, possibly moved by curiosity, nostalgia, or attachment to the life they were leaving behind. She looked back to see the city's destruction. This act of disobedience had immediate and severe consequences. She was turned into a pillar of salt. This event is interpreted by many as a symbol of the consequences of not following divine instructions and clinging to a sinful past. Lot's wife's disobedience and her transformation into a pillar of salt served as a lasting visual testimony of God's judgment. As Lot and his daughters continued their escape to the mountains, her petrified figure remained a silent but powerful reminder of the gravity of disobedience and the importance of faith and obedience to God. This narrative not only emphasizes God's justice and mercy, but also warns about the danger of clinging to the past and the need to move forward with determination toward the future that God offers. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the most dramatic and instructive episodes of the Old Testament. After Lot and his family were brought to safety, God unleashed his judgment on the cities. From the heavens, the Lord rained down sulfur and fire, a cataclysm that consumed everything. This act of destruction was not an ordinary natural event, but a divine intervention that reflected God's righteous wrath at the corruption and wickedness of the inhabitants. The rain of sulfur and fire spread quickly, engulfing the cities in intense flames and toxic gases. Everything in Sodom and Gomorrah was consumed: their buildings, vegetation, and of course, their inhabitants. Nothing and no one was left to tell the story from within. The fertile plain where the cities were located turned into a desolate wasteland of ashes and rubble. A visual representation of fulfilled divine judgment. The annihilation of Sodom and Gomorrah was complete and absolute. The Bible narrates that even the land around the cities was laid waste. This level of destruction was necessary to completely eradicate the evil that had permeated the region. It was a clear message from God about the seriousness with which he views rampant sin and moral corruption. This judgment was not only a response to the acts of violence and perversion committed by the inhabitants, but also a warning to future generations about the consequences of straying from divine principles. The fulfillment of God's judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah serves as a powerful reminder of his justice and sovereignty. God had heard the cry of the land concerning the wickedness of these cities and acted in accordance with his righteous nature. However, this act of judgment is also balanced with the mercy shown to Lot and his family, highlighting that God does not destroy the righteous along with the wicked. The story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah has been remembered throughout the centuries as a warning about divine justice and the need to live according to the moral principles that God sets forth. It is a story that highlights the gravity of sin and the importance of obedience to God. For believers, it serves as a reminder that while God is merciful, he is also just, and his justice does not allow wickedness to go unpunished. This narrative, with its combination of judgment and mercy, remains relevant today, calling us to reflect on our own lives and decisions, and to seek to live according to divine principles to avoid the corruption and sin that led to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And here we conclude our journey through the impressive story of the fall of Sodom and Gomorrah. We hope this account has helped you better understand the importance of living a just life, faithful to divine principles. The story of these cities not only shows us the severity of God's judgment, but also his infinite mercy toward those who strive to live righteously. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring and educational content about the Bible and its teachings. Leave us your comments and tell us what other stories you would like us to explore. May God bless and guide you in every step of your journey. If you were fascinated by the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, don't miss the mystery of the Moabites, a biblical nation in Genesis. Discover the secrets of this ancient people and their surprising connection to biblical history. Click on the video now and dive deeper into the Genesis account. We'll see you there.